ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربي زدني علما ربي زدني علما ربي زدنا علما فالحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So in today's session we are going to continue the story of Musa alayhi salam. And this particular session will start from his journey after the exile from Egypt and how he moved to Madyan. I would like to start this session by once again highlighting that how often this story has been mentioned in Quran. If you look at the surahs of Quran, this has been mentioned in quite a few surahs. I have just mentioned the one which has more frequent ayahs in it. And you can see that starting from Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah Shuara, Surah Yunus, Surah Araf, Surah Taha, Surah Qasas, all these surahs have a major discussion of the life of Prophet Musa alayhi salam. And we all know by this point that anything in Quran is not just random. So if one story has been highlighted so much by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we need to, think about this Seerah story more with more attention, and we need to give more attention to, especially to the points when the story is, as in our vocabulary we would say that story is repeated, but we have to look carefully at the points which are mentioned again and again, because these are the points that needs our really careful attention. I'll try to make it easier for you by mentioning these events that happened after Prophet Musa alayhi salam he started his journey from Egypt. So his exile to Madyan, we'll start with that. Then how he get married in Madyan and the services that he provided in Madyan. Then the story of the burning bush, the first revelation in which he talked to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then his mission to Pharaoh. After that, Exodus and sea parting, the Torah revelation, 40 years in wilderness, and then the death of Prophet Musa alayhi salam. And one thing that I would like to highlight over here is that there are different, scholarly views about the approximate age of Prophet Musa alayhi salam. And according to my own study, he was around 30 years old. He was really young when he left Egypt. After that, he spent like 10 years in Madyan, which is very clear from Quran. So that means that he got his first revelation at the age of 40 years. And after that, when he moved back to Egypt, he was, more than 40 years old. And after that, there were around 10 years of his mission to Pharaoh in Egypt. And after that, after like around, must be around 50 years old at that time, the sea part in Exodus took place. And after that, the story after the sea parting began. And then they spent 40 years in wilderness. So he was around 120 years old, probably when he passed away. So starting from the journey to Madyan. One thing that I would like to highlight over here is that before starting the Quranic ayahs from that if we look at this map, the Egypt and Madyan are quite at a distance, it is around roughly 700 miles is the journey from Egypt to Madyan. And this is like, if you talk about in the modern times, it's like you move from one corner in the London to somewhere in Scotland or so. So it's like a really long route that he covered on foot. So he was traveling by foot, and he didn't have any idea where he's supposed to go. So Allah basically prepared Hazrat Musa alayhi salam in this time by taking him away from the land of Egypt to the land of Madyan, where he again appeared to be a helper, because in the previous part of the story, we have seen that Musa alayhi salam was a child. He was literally a helpless being. And then Allah Ta'ala made all of his life easier. He brought his mother back to him and everything. And now after we've seen that he must be around 30 years old. So he has spent his life in comfort. He was well adjusted and everything. And now Allah Ta'ala made him at the base camp again. He was again at zero. So even his exile from Egypt was because he tried to help someone in distress. And in the fight between, as we have looked in the previous episodes as well, that there was fight between an Israelite and Egyptian. So between in this fight, he tried to hinder an injustice, according to him, in all his goodwill. So in several legal trouble, Musa alayhi salam left the land of Egypt and he went to the land of Madyan. So we basically normally we overlook the distance that he actually covered. So it was about 1,000 kilometers, if we talk in terms of kilometers, and he had experience of crossing Sinai as a way of preparing him to lead Bani Israel through Sinai later on. And when he led Bani Israel into Sinai, Musa alayhi salam had already been there, like in the future when he'll come there. So he had already been there in this time. So now, these are a few events that we will cover in this story. And now we'll move to the Quranic ayahs. We'll continue, in fact, with the 21st ayah of Surah Al-Qasas, in which Allah Ta'ala mentioned that وَجَاءَ رَجُلٌ مِّنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ sorry, we have covered this one, the next one. فَخَرَجَ مِنْهَا خَائِفًا يَتَرَقَّبُ قَالَ رَبِّي نَجِّئْنِي مِنَ الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ. So Musa alayhi salam has left the city, and as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning, that he left the city in the state of fear and caution. And he's praying meanwhile that Master, deliver me. My master, you delivered me from the wrongdoing people. وَلَمَّا توجه تلقاء مدين قال عسى ربي أن يهديني سواء السبيل. So Musa alayhi salam, now he has left Egypt, and now he said that thanks God, I am like off the wrongdoing people. And now what next? So he started his journey by making a prayer. So this is like a big lesson for us, that when he has no help, he has no guidance, he started his journey with a prayer. And what is his prayers? وَلَمَّا تَوَجَّهَ تِلْقَاءَ مَدْيَنَ قَالَ عَسَىٰ رَبِّي أَن يَهْدِيَنِي سَوَاءَ السَّبِيلِ. I hope that and trust that my Lord will guide me to the right way. And this is like the modern time GPS, that Musa alayhi salam, because where is he now? He's like in the outskirts of the city. He doesn't know where to go. He doesn't have any plan. He doesn't have that extensively clearly. And now he's direction, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that is the direction of Madyan. Musa alayhi salam at that time doesn't know that. So when he looked in that particular direction, he prayed that I hope my master will guide me to the right path, because when he's looking in that direction, he's probably thinking that, okay, now I'm going to go this direction. So there is a deep link between our prayers and our decision, because normally what we think is that if we are praying, we wouldn't move or do anything. But in Islam, we just don't pray, we act as well with that prayer. So trust on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our prayers are two things that is interconnected, but we need to take an action as well. So he looked in that direction and he probably started walking. And walamma warada ma'a Madyana, and when he reached the waters of Madyan, wajada alayhi ummatan minan nasi yasqawna wajada min dunihim marataini tazudani qala ma khatbatukuma. Now he has reached Madyan, and he arrived Madyan at a well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning that this is a well. And the beauty of the story telling in Quran Pak is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will create a scene, so that when we are reading these ayah, we transport ourselves to that particular situation and we can imagine the situation. So yeah, I would like you to imagine this as I'm reading this, that when he arrived at the waters of Madyan, he found a group of people watering their herds. So there are probably herd of sheep, and there are people who are watering these sheep. Apart from them, he noticed two women holding back their herds. So there's water. Some people are standing over there with their herd of sheep and they are watering their animals. And there are two women in the background that Musa alayhi salam can see. And they are holding back their animals. So, the animals must be thirsty and they want water, but the women are incapable of going ahead and watering their animals. So they are holding back their sheep. So this is so visual that, the sheep are going ahead and the women are pulling them back. That's why they caught Musa alayhi salam attention. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned Qala, Musa alayhi salam said, Ma khatbukuma? What is the matter with you? قالتا لا نسقي حتى يصدر رعاء وأبونا شيخ كبير. And the women replied, we cannot water our animals until other shepherds are done, and our father is a very old man. So, so now these women are this is a conversation happening between the women and Musa alayhi salam. And for us, this is a conversation happening between two young people of the opposite gender. And we have a lesson over here to learn from, because normally in our society, there are frequently found two type of men when they're speaking to women. One type of them would be like over friendly, and we clearly know that's wrong, okay? But the other type of men who would think that they are doing right are the one who would just hold back and not talk to women at all. And in Quran, at several points, and especially at this one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us the manners of having a conversation with the opposite gender. So we have to stop over here and scan this conversation. And to any, female listeners, women are mentioned less often in Quran Pak. So whenever a woman is mentioned in Quran, we have to put super effort in understanding that what is their role, how are they acting, what is the modesty of the woman in which they're talking. So in this conversation, Musa alayhi salam doesn't begin the conversation with like, hi, how are you doing, I am a prevalent. No, he just came straight to the point. What is the matter with you? Why are you standing over there? And it is just like a conversation. If we remove the women out of it, it's just like the conversation happening between any two people. One person has looked over some people in trouble, and he came over and he asked him that, what is the matter with you? Why are you standing over here? And they replied that we are standing here and we are not crazy people. Our sheep are thirsty, we can see that, but we are not crazy. We are just holding back because we cannot water our sheep until these shepherds are done. So we have to wait here until they are done. So this also shows the custom and the mentality of the people of Madyan, the male people of Madyan, who were not kind enough or good enough to the women, that if two women are standing, they could have, asked them to come first. No, all of them would get done and then they would come. Also, this shows that the people were probably not respectable towards the women. That's why they had to wait for them to go, and they cannot, pass through them or by side of them and water their sheep. So, and also very importantly, these women mention that our father, wa abuna Sheikhan Kabir. Sheikhun Kabir could mean two things over here. One, they could mean that our father is a very old man. So, since our father is old, that's why we have to come. Another thing that could be meant over here is that they are saying that our father is a big deal. So, be very careful talking to us that our father is a really big deal. Before we move to the next slide, I would like to highlight one thing more over here, that the use of the word when Musa alayhi salam left Egypt, he said, Rabbi najini min al-qawm zalimin. This word, najini min al-qawm zalimin, this has been used by Asiya Razila Ta'ala Anhu, who played the role of a mother and who raised Musa alayhi salam. So this is really important thing, that in Quran when certain words are repeated at different instances, there is some parallel between them. So the Asiya Razila Ta'ala Anhu using the same word when she was being tortured by Pharaoh, she prayed that Rabbi najini min al-qawmi zalimin, Master, rescue me from the wrongdoing people. And Musa alayhi salam is using the same prayer, thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that thank God you saved me from the wrongdoing people. And this is a very important lesson of tarbiyah that we need to learn from. Because, what we teach our kids, what our kids are hearing from us, from our normal conversation, is not something random for them. Kids pick on the language of their parents. Normally we think that when we have this one-to-one conversation with kids, or we are, delivering a sermon to the kids, or we are guiding them over something, they would listen to it. Okay, they would listen to some part of it, but somehow the kids work in this way that when the adults are having conversation, when we are living our lives, they notice us, and they are like sponges. They would absorb every single word that we use. And we have noticed this in our surroundings as well, that the kids use the same tone, the same language, and the same words that they listen from their adults, especially their parents. And the same lesson can be applied from this parallel, that Asiya Razila Ta'ala Anhu and Musa alayhi salam are using the same words in their prayers. So may Allah guide us all to turn to Allah at the time of difficulty, and may Allah teach us to be a guide or a mentor or an example for our kids, so that they can make the right dua at the right time, because we cannot be with our kids all the times, and there would be difficulties in their lives as well. So this is a very important lesson that we can give to them, so that they may turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the time of their difficulties. So moving on to next ayah. So now we are in Madyan. Musa alayhi salam has started this conversation with these two girls, and now he's saying that fasaka lahuma, so he watered the herd for them, summa tawalla, and then he returned back. So he didn't extended the conversation so much over there. He just watered the sheep, and just he didn't stand there for a standing ovation or an appreciation for the woman. He just did the good deal and came back. So the women probably haven't seen any man like this before, because we know from the situation that they're standing there for so long, and there's not even a single good man who could offer them any help, or who could help them with this problem. So these women didn't ask for the name. They just went back to their home, and Musa alayhi salam went back to his place. And I was saying that from this we get to learn the etiquettes or the lesson of having conversation with an opposite gender. We cannot ghost to the opposite gender. We cannot just pretend they don't exist. We need to understand the boundaries and the manners that Islam has taught us, and from the examples that we read from Quran of how this conversation or any conversation with the opposite gender should happen. So Musa alayhi salam went back and he prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَقَالَ رَبِّي إِنِّي لِمَا أَنزَلْتُ إِلَيَّ مِنْ خَيْرٍ فَقِيرٌ. This is a very famous dua as well, that Musa alayhi salam started praying that, my Lord, I am truly desperate. I am truly in desperate need of whatever provision you may have in store for me. So, Musa alayhi salam is saying that, he doesn't have any place to live. He doesn't have anything with him. So any kind of good that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might provide him, he is desperate to get that help. And also some scholars relate this to the guilt that he still have inside him about the murder that has happened accidentally by him. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forgiven him, but being a good person, he still have this guilt inside him. So some scholars believe that when he did a good deed to those women, it was a selfless good deed, and it was also a sorry good deed. So he's telling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that any future good that I can do like this to make up for my mistake, I am desperately waiting for that. So this is how his personality has been projected in Quran. In the next ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning فَجَاءَتْهُ إِحْدَاهُمَا تَمْشِي عَلَى اسْتِحْيَاءٍ قَالَتْ إِنَّ أَبِي يَدْعُوكَ لِيَجْزِيَكَ أَجْرَ مَا سَقَيْتَ لَنَا. So the women, they probably went home, and their father must have asked him, because they reached home a little early than the normal time, because normally they must come late. So they are a little early. So the father might have asked him that, how are you early? And they must have told him the story that, we haven't seen any man like this who could offer us help. So the father sent one of them back, and this woman, one of the two sisters, she came back for Ja'athu. So she came back to Musa alayhi salam And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in Quran Pak, every word is precious. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using two words here, that she came walking with grace, walking with haya. So this is really, really important because, in modern times, when we are giving appearance over anywhere to an interview or anywhere, we learn about this, that half of your personality is revealed from the way you walk in the room where you have to make that appearance. You must have noticed this in several meetings as well, that before a person starts speaking, you can tell a lot about the person. You make a perception about the person just by the way they are walking. So this is something that we observe, but when we are acting, we neglect this thing. Our walk, the way we walk, is really, really important. In Quran Pak, at another point, Allah Ta'ala subhanahu wa ta'ala, I also mentioned the qualities that are characteristic of mu'mineen is that they walk on earth with grace, with softness. And here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning that this woman was, when she's walking, she's coming to Musa alayhi salam again. He's a guy and she's a girl. So she's coming to meet him alone. The other sister is not there. And she's walking with grace. She's telling with her body language that what kind of woman she is. And she comes and with haya. She's walking with haya. And what she said, Qalat inna abi yad'uka. So she says that obviously, of course, there's no doubt in that is my father who is inviting you. So one, she's walking with care. Secondly, she's talking with care. And then she said, liyatziyaka, so that he may reward you. So she says that my father is inviting you to our home, and so that he may reward you. Ajra ma sakita lana, because you watered the animals for us. So my father wants to give you the reward or the payment for that. فَلَمَّا جَاءَ, so when Musa alayhi salam meet his father, وَقَصَّ عَلَيْهِ الْقَصَصَ, he told him the whole story. And if you can focus on the Arabic of these words, وَقَصَّ عَلَيْهِ الْقَصَصَ, so he narrated to them the whole story. So Musa alayhi salam had been keeping a lot of things to himself. And when he met the father of these women, he must be a really nice guy. He's old age. So he found him trustworthy. So he opened up and told him the whole story. Qala la takhaf. And the old man replied that you don't need to fear. Najauta min al-qawm az-zalimin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has now made you safe from the wrongdoing people. Qalat ihdahuma. So one of them said, okay, we have to stop over here. I think that one thing here is that there is a very common, I would say, confusion or contradiction between scholarly views about who this old man was. Some of the people would say that this old man is the father-in-law of Musa alayhi salam. He is Prophet Shoaib alayhi salam. And some scholars believe that he's just an old man who was pious. He was good man, but he wasn't a prophet. So there's a contradiction between these opinion. Wallahu ta'ala alam. But basically, this opinion is based on the tafasir in which in another surah of Quran, Surah Qasas, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that we sent Prophet Shoaib to Madyan. So because of the same place, some scholars believe that he is the same Prophet Shoaib whose daughters got married to Musa alayhi salam. But some believe that, because since that timeline is not mentioned, so we are not sure because Quran is silent upon this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never mentioned that he's the same uh, prophet. Someone has a question, I guess we can take it.
We have a question in the chat that if you can mention scholar's name, that would be much appreciated.
Okay, so I don't have the scholar's name at hand right now, but some narrations from Ibn Kathir and Al-Tabiri points out that this can be Prophet Shoaib alayhi salam. And the other believes that this is not I think that more important than who was the scholar who said that, we can also research that, we can provide that. The important thing is the reason behind that, and the reason behind that is that this is mentioned in Quran that Prophet Shuaib was sent to Madyan, and Musa alayhi salam was in Madyan. He met a very pious man in Madyan, so this can be the same person. But I think that only this cannot be, we cannot make the assumption just because of that, because the timeline hasn't been mentioned, uh, and uh, because the timeline, because we don't know the timeline of that, so believing that he was simply an elder man of Madian is more safe opinion, and he may be another prophet, or he may be just a pious person, because the Quran is silent on this particular person. So I think that that answers your question, and we can also provide you the exact references if you want.
I have one thing to add over here.
Yes,
I
please.
think this difference of opinion has already been sorted out now. It was a difference of opinion previously when it was not found out that who that man is from the Quran. But after, like muhaqqiqin, like I think it's Ibn Taymiyyah, when he mentioned the words from when you study the story of Madyan, Ashab Madyan of Qawm Shuaib, then you come across a verse in which Hazrat Shuaib, Prophet Shuaib, is addressing his Qawm, and then he says that the Qawm of Lut is not very far from you, because he then gives all the matters, all the references of all the torments and azab that has been done on the different aqwam, and then he says that wama kana qawmul qawm lutin bi ba'id. It's this
Yes.
ayah. So this marks very clearly that it was the Lut alayhi salam and Prophet Shuaib alayhi salam, they were just next to each other. And we know that Prophet Lut alayhi salam was in the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So it was after Ibrahim alayhi salam. So the timeline is clear now because of these verses. And whenever you see in the Quran, whenever Allah mentions Lut alayhi salam, then just after Lut alayhi salam, Allah mentions Shuaib alayhi salam. Like after in I think in Surah Hud also, when Allah mentions the waqia, the whole story of Lut alayhi salam, then he after just after that he mentions the story of the story of Shuaib alayhi salam. So I think these verses and the whole theme of the Quran that clarifies the whole thing, and there is no doubt about that. This man was not Shuaib alayhi salam. Otherwise, Allah would have told, even his name is not mentioned in the Quran. And just because of the coincidence of Madyan versus Madyan, that doesn't make him Shuaib alayhi salam. That's all from my side.
Yeah, Jazakallah Zain. That was like a very comprehensive and, a very right answer that you provided. Jazakallah khair. And that, because the earlier assumption was based on just, something which was not very clear already. So I think Zain explained it very comprehensively and very clearly. Jazakallah khair. So when the conversation happened, the girls must be listening from behind the curtain or something. So one of them said, "Qalat." One of them said, "Ihtahuma." One of them said, "Ya bati." Oh, my dear dad. "Astajirhu." We must hire him. Inna khayra manistar jarta al-kavishul amin. So the girl mentioned to his father that, "Oh, my dear father, we should hire him. A strong and trustworthy person is definitely the best one to hire." So, so the girl talked to his father and give him, a hint that, this is a strong man. We need some support in our family, and this man can be a very good support. So, the dad, he started the conversation with Musa alayhi salam in the next ayah, and he said that, "Qala inni uridu an unkihaka ihda ibnati tayya hat hataini ala an ta'jurani samaniya haji." So the old man proposed that, "I wish to marry one of these daughters of mine to you, provided that you stay in my service for 8 years." And if you complete 10 years, so 10 years are not mandatory, but if you complete 10 years, it will be a favor from you. And then he said, Satajiduni inshallahu min salihin. So, and if you, I don't wish to make it difficult for you, and if Allah wills, you will find me an agreeable man. So he proposed Musa alayhi salam to marry one of his daughters and offer him some work to do over here. And Musa alayhi salam replied that Qala, he said, Zalika baini wa bainik. This is between you and me. And he also mentioned that whichever term I fulfill, there will be no further obligation on me. And Allah is a witness to what we say. So Musa alayhi salam didn't overcommit. He didn't say, of course, I will do 10 years or anything. He was just very mindful in making the commitment. And he says that whichever of the two I can fulfill, there is no obligation on me to complete the 10 years. And Allah is the witness between you and me. So this clearly shows that he was a really good person. He can be one of the followers of Shoaib alayhi salam because he also believes in Allah, and the agreement is happening by making Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the witness. One more thing that I would like to mention over here is that this marriage proposal is different from the marriage proposals or the marriages that are happening in our days. I would like to ask the audience to join me at this time, at this point, and we can have a conversation about this last ayah that we studied, in which the father is proposing the son-in-law. Anyone likes to add something about this thing, and what do you find different in this marriage proposal and in this conversation and in this marriage that is happening and the marriages that are happening these days?
Can I say something?
Yes,
It is
please.
like in our culture, like in Pakistan, it's just very bad. Like if a father is asking, a girl's father is asking for the boy's hand first, and second, in this one, the boy demand is girl's father is putting a demands, not the boy is putting any demands. In our culture, only the
Yeah.
boys basically we tell boys in our culture. Okay, give me this, give me that, give me, okay, what we're gonna give in dowry and different things. These two differences I just think of.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. And you very rightly pointed out. Anyone want to add anything?
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum.
Anything
It's
different
Rabina
from?
here.
Yes, please.
So even if we mention references from the Quran, especially about this scenario, and that the proposition can come from the girl's side, and the girl's father, the parent can lay out what their demands are or needs are. It's not necessarily material, but it's, in this case, he's asking for support, that, because he's old, he's got 2 girls, he needs help. So, it's a beautiful dialogue, it's a beautiful relationship, which even if we refer this to current times and with our own community, especially in Pakistan, it's just nobody's going to take this on board because, first of all, nobody's opened the Quran and read stories, all the stories in this surah, as a lesson. Nobody's taken it on as a lesson. It's not discussed in khutbahs. It's not discussed, as if nobody's interested in changing the culture. And if, for example, I did try and raise this, and it was met with so much resistance. No, it's not done here. The girls never go to the boys. As if they don't want to change. What is going on? They just want to keep going on the path that, even if it's causing a lot of anxiety to some families, and this is the way
Yes.
out. And this is the way, it's like a how you take marriage proposal. If you identify, first of all, somebody who is worthy, you know, of your daughter, as you see some qualities in a boy, and you think, you know, this boy is worthy of being partner, a husband for my daughter, it would solve a lot of societal issues, you know. But it's just ignorance, I'm afraid. It's going to take a lot of time, and it's met with resistance. They just want, I don't know what they see in the current method, in the current culture, how they carry on things, which I hope, you know, they can benefit from the lessons from the Quran, inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah. And that's why we are having these conversations, so that at least the people over here who are talking, we are initiating this conversation, and we are trying to learn or take lessons from Quran. Iram, you want to add something? You can.
Yes, what I noticed is that the old man, the pious man mentioned, does not have any sons. He just has daughters, and he's old. And obviously, he's asked Musa alayhi salam to help him or to support him. So I was thinking that there are certain situations where somebody has just daughters, they don't have sons, and they are quite old or in their old age, unable to look after themselves, or maybe they just need the help of a man. They just need a man in the house. So it is okay for the son-in-law to stay with the in-laws, or to stay with or maybe house the father-in-law. Like it's okay for the man or for the son-in-law to live with his in-laws, or maybe he can ask the in-laws or the father-in-law to come stay with him so that he can support him. Again, this is something that is not done culturally, like it's not widespread, rather frowned upon. But this has been sort of highlighted in the Quran, this whole situation, for a reason. And there are households which are just in this like similar situation, where if the father marries off all the girls and his wife is not alive and he does not have a son, he will just be living alone on his own.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's sort of a gesture of goodwill to just live with them, or ask them to live with you to support them. That's my learning.
Yeah, and it's really in fact sad to understand that sometimes if you read Quran, there are our lives, our culture, and things that are happening these days is like far apart from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has proposed. And you know, when we read Quran, we take it as a manual from the one who has created us. So as Sahil Bhai always mentioned, that the maker of the machine knows the best about the machine. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can tell the best what can work in our society. And this is what we need to take from Quran. And also, there are three sides of this single situation, single ayah that is mentioned. One is for the girl side, as many of you have mentioned, that you know, the marriage proposal is flipped. Musa alayhi salam is not asking for the hand of that girl. The father came forward and he proposed that if you want to marry my daughter. Secondly, there is no pressure of, you know, what gold, what gifts you're gonna propose, you're gonna give or bring, or from both the sides. It's the support that the father needs. Can you work for me for 8 years? And if you stay for 10 years, that's your kindness. So work here is actually dowry. That's coming from the male side. That is completely unconventional from our side. And the third thing that I would like to mention over here is from the boy side as well. Who is Musa alayhi salam at that time? Musa alayhi salam doesn't even know that he's alayhi salam at that time. He's just a normal boy who is like, he is deported, or he ran away from his country. He has no money. He doesn't have any tribe. He doesn't have any status. He's just a fugitive running for his life, and he has told the whole story to the father-in-law. And what do you think? What made this man marry off his daughter to this man who he doesn't know, who doesn't have any, you know, any good social points? But he still chose this man because of the strength and trustworthiness and the choice of the girl. The girls have met Musa alayhi salam in the presence of no no eye watching them except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Musa alayhi salam had been very decent to them all through this time. So they have this trust in him that this person is trustworthy. We have seen, women know that we can tell what kind of men is talking to us in a conversation. So the choice of girls is very important. Also, his father, he thinks that he's a stranger. He doesn't have any house. He just got here yesterday. They saw the values, not the labels. So, this work plus marriage is a deal that he created. It's like a contract that he has created, because the male person cannot live in his house without any relationship with the girl. So he made this contract so that, like we say, that's a win-win deal for everybody. And they are becoming a family to be useful to each other. He needs a house, he needs a family, and they need someone to support them. So it's like a win-win situation. So marriages always are not, romantic. They can have, partnership as well. So this is also something that we need to understand in our society these days, especially to the young girls as well, that stop making marriage about the status symbol. And don't dismiss people because they don't fit your cultural checklist. If someone has a good character, it's better than having a good career, because time can change for anyone. And if you can trust someone as an individual, even if they don't have any tribe on their back, if the person is good enough, he is good enough in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is good enough. You don't need any checklist for that. And sometimes the one who look like they have nothing actually has everything. So this is how Musa alayhi salam spent like 10 years in Madyan. And living in Madyan was very important for Musa alayhi salam, because during this time, in the first part of his life that we have covered, he lived in the palace with the king. So he had all the access to the things that rich people or the elite people have. So now this part of his life, he learned to be patient, to be responsible, and to be humble on his own. He got the time to connect to himself. And we have read a lot of stories of the prophet who were shepherds. So he get to be a shepherd in this time, and working for his father-in-law, living a simple life, actually helped Musa alayhi salam become stronger and wiser. And in later we'll see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also mentioned that, this was qadar. Everything, every situation in his life was being, created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seen, monitored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these experiences prepared him for his future role as a leader who would stand up against the pharaohs and the cruel leadership of Egypt. And Prophet Musa alayhi salam times in Madyan taught him that true leadership is not about having lots of money or power, but it's about being humble and helping others. After that, I'll just share a few things about the next part of the story, in which Musa alayhi salam has his first conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inshallah, we'll discuss that in detail in the next session. But we can have, a starter about this discussion, because this is like a very important discussion. First man in the history who had this direct conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we are blessed to read about that conversation, to know about that conversation, to observe that and get lessons from that. So we need to, be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for revealing this to us as well, to making us the part of that journey. So this conversation is commonly known as burning bush, and this is mentioned like 3 times in Quran. In Surah Taha, this has been mentioned, then in Surah Namal, and then in Surah Qasas. Before the next session, I would request all of you to go through these ayahs, all 3 of them, all 3 positions in which this is mentioned, so that when we discuss them, we all can add some things to it, and we all can see what's the beauty of this repetition. So in Surah Taha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, basically Surah Taha begins on a emotional note, and this is a conversation between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Hazrat Muhammad, peace be upon him. So Allah ta'ala is focusing basically the personal development of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and it's on a very personal and emotional note, and he is sharing the Musa alayhi salam's inner feeling at the time of this conversation, how he was having the fear, hesitation, and how he requested for support. No man is capable on their own. So normally we think that if but normally when we are given the examples of prophet, we say that, oh, he is a prophet, of course he can do it. How can I do it? I am a simple man. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sharing the human side of prophet with us to know that they're also human. They have these human emotions, but by the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they overcome these fears, and by extension this is a lesson for us to overcome our shortcomings and these emotions. And this is to show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy and reassurance, and how he can equip prophets emotionally and spiritually. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calms Musa alayhi salam's multiple fears in Surah Taha. Second, also in Surah Taha, Allah Ta'ala emphasizes the human side of Musa alayhi salam and the comforting side of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The role of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the role of human is being very clearly demonstrated in this conversation. Second is the mentioning in Surah Al-Qasas, which is basically in Surah Al-Qasas, like we are reading it right now. In this mentioning, it is basically a transition, the continuation of the story, like we are doing. It's the transition of this story from the exile to the mission that Musa alayhi salam has to do again by going back to Egypt. So the focus is basically Musa's return to Madyan and his transition from ordinary life to a prophethood. And basically the purpose is to show how divine missions can emerge from humble and personal journeys. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is setting the context in Surah Al-Naml that Musa alayhi salam is traveling with his family, he sees fire, and then he end up in a prophetic mission. And the tone here is very transformational and practical, because this is like the whole story of the prophetic journey that Musa alayhi salam is having. Thirdly, it's in Surah, sorry, it was Surah Qasas that we were talking about. Now we're talking about Surah Naml. And in Surah Naml, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when mentioned this story, it is like the evidence of divine power. Firstly, in Surah Taha, I said that it is the emotional and personal development side. In Surah Qasas, it is basically the call to prophethood and the responsibility that Musa alayhi salam has to take up. And now in Surah Naml, it is basically the evidence of the divine power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the focus is on the signs, on the miracles that Musa alayhi salam has been given, the staff and the glowing hand. And the purpose is to highlight or prove the authority of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over nature and truth. And this mentioning in Surah Namal is very short, but it is very intensely focused on the proofs of the divine majesty. And it is very useful in context of the whole surah. Basically, the whole surah is focused on prophethood and miracles, and between all the prophets and miracle, this is also mentioned in a very majestic, declarative, and miraculous way. So also apart from this has also been mentioned a little bit in Surah Shuara as well, in which the confrontation of Musa alayhi salam with pharaohs have been discussed, and this purpose is reinforced during the mission as a challenge. And it's more about the social struggles and less about the personal fears, like we have read in Surah Taha. This is also mentioned, like one ayah is also mentioned, one or two ayahs mentioned in Surah Araf as well, in which Musa alayhi salam's desire to see Allah, like how after talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his desire raised and he wanted to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's briefly mentioned over there as well. So I would like all of you to, go through this one time, all of these 5 surahs that I mentioned, in which this conversation between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Prophet Musa has been mentioned. If you go through this, the conversation will be more interesting, inshallah, next time. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'anil Hakim wa nafa'ni wa iyyakum bi ayati wa zikril hakim. If there is any question, we can take it. Or if someone wants to discuss anything, I think we can wrap up then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.